Everyone, how's it going? I hope everyone has had a great week so far. Enjoying the summer time here in the northern hemisphere, at least, or enjoying the winter time in the southern hemisphere. But uh, today, I want to talk a little bit about a question that someone asked me the other day. That is kind of interesting, and I'm sure other people probably have wondered this themselves. It was around this person was really asking me, they have a fitness tracking device and they've integrated it with the software that they use to track their food intake. So how many calories they're eating and stuff like that. And when they integrate the two together, oftentimes the fitness tracking device will calculate how many calories you burn throughout the day with exercise and movement and all that fun stuff, and then add that on top of what the food tracking application says you should eat for a day. So it'll be like, on a normal day, if you didn't exercise, maybe you'd eat, 1,800 calories or 2,000 calories or something like that, whatever it says. And then maybe you go for a run or you lift some weights or whatever, and it says you burnt 300 calories. And so it adds on an extra 300 calories into your daily total to eat that day. And this person happens to be a female, was asking me whether they should include more food on days when they work out because the fitness tracking app was adding in additional calories into their goal, and their food intake was higher on those days. And my answer to this person, and actually this is what I do with all of my clients as well as myself, nearly 95% of the time, is I don't adjust calories day to day based on activity or not. Like if you work out one day, I'm not going to have you eat differently than a day that you didn't work out. That's because it makes life easier, and some people are already quite um, overwhelmed by tracking food, anyways. And so to add the complexity of trying to figure out on specific days that they work out whether they should be eating more or less, or just makes things harder, right? So at the end of the day, for almost every single person, what matters is the average calorie intake you had throughout the week versus what you expended throughout the week, right? So as long as that number, if for example you're trying to lose body fat, as long as that average calorie intake or the total calorie intake at the end of the week is puts you in a caloric deficit compared to how much you burnt throughout the entire week, then you're going to lose body fat, right? So it doesn't matter that if one day maybe you ate more calories than you burn, as long as the majority of the time everything kind of balances out and you end up in this caloric deficit at the end of the week. Because at the end of the week, then you're still in a negative energy balance, and therefore your body is having to use its stored body fat to provide that energy, and that's exactly what you want in the case of a fat loss experiment. And the same thing holds true, but in the opposite, if you're trying to add body mass, right? In this case, muscle mass, I hope. Um, it doesn't matter how the calories play out throughout the week, as long as at the end of the week you're in a caloric surplus of some kind in order to provide the calories to build the muscle, that type of thing, right? So either direction doesn't matter. And then I just look at, okay, let me look at what I basically do is look at the person's total calories for the week, divide that up by 7 days, and then that's their total calorie that they can have across the week for each day. And if we want to be in a deficit, then we'll lower that number down a little bit each day to make sure at the end of the week they end up in their necessary caloric deficit. So ultimately, I don't pay attention to what activity trackers say as far as caloric burn, just because it's so wildly inaccurate, right? I mean, I've seen myself, like, for example, if I use my snowblower or my lawnmower, and I'm clearly moving around and walking and stuff like that, but because of the vibration of the machine, it looks like I'm doing a lot of work. And my activity trackers will just go bonkers on those days because it's just like the vibration of the machine plus the fact that I'm moving around just makes my activity burn look absolutely massive, right? And So even if we disregard those fluke things that happen, um, you know, they're still activity trackers are still wildly inaccurate as far as as caloric burn is concerned. So I don't pay attention to that. I just use total calories throughout the week. Say, okay, let's track your food. We estimate caloric burn based on the amount of how active they are, how many steps they're taking, etc., and kind of get a rough idea. And then I put them in a small, if we're talking about fat loss, I put them in a small deficit each day. They have consistent food intake, whether they're exercising or it's a rest day. And then over the course of a month or so, we look at what the scale is doing. Is the scale moving in the direction that we want it to go? Is it going down? Is it going down too fast? Is it not going down at all? Right. And then so we adjust that caloric intake, and I use the scale as a guide to know whether we need to go up in calories or down in calories or stay the course, because it's the thing that's indicating whether we're going in the direction we want to go. Right. And we also look at obviously other subjective things like performance in the gym, if that's important, fatigue, sleep, all that fun stuff also plays a role. So it's a very comprehensive, experience when we're trying to dial these things in, because we want to make sure that we're still able to sleep, we still have enough energy to do the things we want to do, our digestion's okay, all that other fun stuff is okay, while we're still trying to make the necessary body composition changes in whatever direction we're trying to go. And I honestly really don't use the activity tracker. Calorie intake doesn't really play much of a role into that. Um, so there are some small s- cases where I may adjust calories on a given day, given specific workouts or activities or stuff that's coming up, right? So if I have someone who's really interested in performance, that's their goal. We have big competitions, or they're trying to recover from a competition or something like that, then I will, um, you know, take into account the amount of activity they're about to go do, or how they want to perform at that activity, or the amount of activity they have done um, in that uh, uh, workout or whatever competition, and biased caloric intake based on that, right? So I had someone who recently just completed an ultra distance obstacle course race, and leading up and post race, I paid a lot of attention to their caloric intake, because we wanted to make sure they had enough food on board for the 30 plus miles that they're going to be out there, uh, pretty much exercising the entire time. We also want to make sure that after the workout that they're recovering properly, and they're making up for all the calories that they burn, because there's no way that they could eat enough food on that day in order to uh, um, satisfy the caloric needs that they had put out. And so, in the interest of recovery, and making sure we don't dig ourselves into a hole, we had adjusted caloric intake based on that, right? And even that case is most like, just I tell people, don't restrict anything. Like, just, I mean, like, don't try to pay too much attention to the macros, right? Just eat whole nutritious foods to the point where you feel satisfied. And so I don't really, just kind of just throw tracking out the window for a little bit, just to make sure that you're not subconsciously restricting anything by any means, hindering recovery or performance or stuff like that. Those are the rare scenarios that I will take exercise or fitness into account when it comes to tracking food intake. And like I said, I actually just tell them not to track, and not worry about it, and just make sure they're eating enough food, of all three macronutrients, and they feel satisfied, both up to and then after those types of activities. But for the average person who's just trying to be fit, they exercise a few times a week. Their workouts are 30 minutes to an hour. They're not doing crazy 4 hour workouts or stuff like that. I just leave their caloric intake pretty much the same. We set a number; it's the same every single day, and then we go with that throughout the week. We don't pay attention. We don't adjust based on activity, because at the end of the week we just want to have a slight caloric deficit, and that kind of evens out based on exercise days and rest days and stuff like that. So it makes things easier. It's less complicated, and most people find it just much more enjoyable to be able to eat the same way every single day, as opposed to um, uh, trying to nitpick and change things every so often. Every day is different. So with that, that's kind of the topic I want to talk about today. I know it's probably a question that people wonder about a lot, and that's how I approach things. Surprisingly, it's not overly complicated at all. I always prefer simplicity over anything else. So if we can get by with simplicity, that's where my sweet spot is for most people, because life is complicated enough, and we don't need any more complications that are unnecessary. So if you like the content that I'm putting out and you want to hear more about this stuff, please join my newsletter, and that's where the best way to follow what I'm putting out and the information I have to give. You can scan that QR code right in well, that'd be my uh, the upper left-hand side of my video. You can scan that QR code. I'll bring you right to my webpage where you can just enter your email address and sign up for my newsletter. And that's the best way to keep up with everything I'm putting out on a weekly basis. If you have more questions or need help in a little more hands-on approach, and this whole, maybe the topic of calories is complexing to you and you've been struggling with it for a long time and can't figure it out and you're looking for a better way to do things, I'm always here to help. And I do have one spot for one-on-one clients. So if you need more of a more intimate approach to helping you along, by all means, go to my website, rjbhelp.coach, click on the schedule discovery call button, and then we can find a time, fill out that form, we can find a time to jump on a call and just chat a little bit more about whether it would be a good fit to work together. I'm happy to chat with anyone and everyone who's interested. So with that, I hope everyone has had a great week and has a great weekend, and I'll talk to you all next week.